David is going to solve all these problems. And he volunteered for this, the easiest task, haha. When I volunteered to do this, I called up a friend and I said, do you want to talk about what to do after McCutcheon? And that my own deep pessimism is that there's nothing you can do. But David is an optimist. So,
thank you, Tom. This is on. Yeah. So I think we could probably all agree that we should give Zephyr more minutes to take us through history. It's great to be on this panel with friends and colleagues, and thank you, Tom, for doing this with us. It's really also great to be here at Demos, and thanks to the Brennan Center for co-hosting it with Demos. So I had the pleasure and the privilege to be the campaign manager to pass the first comprehensive public financing law at the state level back in 1995 and 1996 in Maine, the Maine Clean Elections effort. And I had a mantra back then that I was a message hawk. I would tell, I'm a political hack by trade, so I would tell everyone, we're going to talk about the problem 95% of the time, to try to convince voters to vote for this thing. And when we talk about the solution, we're going to talk about it in terms of the problem. So even that other 5%, we're going to talk about the problem. I think over the past 20 years, we have utterly won the debate about the problem of money in politics. I think we have, unfortunately, utterly won the debate about how corrupt government is. And it's time now to think about rehabilitating the patient a little bit. It's incredibly important right now, not just to think about the obstacles in the courts or the obstacles in legislatures or the governor's office here sometimes, or in Congress. It's also important to think about the obstacle of public cynicism. Because given what Americans see and hear about the issue of money in politics, they hear wealthy fundraising events, they hear bad decisions from the courts, they hear politicians getting in the way. They don't hear much promise or much hope that you can actually do anything to fix it. So I think it's incredibly important to pierce that cynicism, and in order to have a conversation, in order to push solutions to these issues, not simply to push the problem. So I've evolved on this question, as they say, to think that we really need to win the debate about solutions, not just to point out the problem. So what are the solutions that are available to us within this constitutional interpretation by the courts? Well, clearly, one that the court keeps pointing to is transparency. I think transparency is fine. I don't think it gets us there. I think it's really important to do transparency well. Transparency on how government operates further creates more cynicism about government. Right? We need to do transparency around the private capture of government, the influences that private interests have on government. So that's the good transparency. And obviously, the other solution is public financing, involving many, many more citizens in the financing of elections. It's been an incredible effort here in New York over the last couple of years, led by very strong organizations, Citizen Action of New York, Working Families Organization, Demos, and Brennan Center have also been deeply involved, Common Cause, and a number of other organizations here at the state level. And it's been a significant effort. It's really clear, though, that the effort hinges on building political power. I'm going to get back to that point either later in my comments or maybe in the question and answers. The second really encouraging development in this space is the emergence of federal legislation called the Government by the People Act. There's 145 co-sponsors in the House. There's a Senate companion bill called the Fair Elections Now Act with nearly 20 co-sponsors in the Senate. And it basically works like the system here in New York City works, which is a multiple match, a 6-to-1 match on small donations for candidates who agree to just to take those small donations. And that's an incredibly exciting thing, not simply because of the sheer numbers, but because of the way that the Democrats in Congress have really weighed in on this and really put their caucus, put this issue in the middle of their caucus. Nancy Pelosi has become a true believer on this question and was a lead co-sponsor with Representative John Sarbanes. There have been champions all around the country, elected officials who are doing events in their districts to support the issue, just to educate their constituents about the need for solutions, not just about the problem. And in the wake of the McCutcheon decision, there was also a tremendous amount of activity, not simply to protest the decision, but to start talking about solutions. And in fact, the last couple weeks there have been petition deliveries, both for the Government by the People Act at district offices, as well as district meetings supporting constitutional amendment, in a joint effort by about 25 different national organizations. That's the second incredibly important development, is that there is a shift in Congress to talk a little bit more about solutions than just the problem. The third important development is what Heather alluded to. It's not simply the issues that we see that are merging, political and economic inequality, together in one kind of powerful mix. It's the institutional turn to these issues. Mm-hmm. The number of organizations that didn't just sign on to the Government by the People Act, 50 different organizations, national organizations, endorsed it at its introduction. They actually put their staff and their members in the arena. They engaged their members in a way that we haven't seen, that I haven't seen in the 20 years of doing this work. They deeply engaged, trying to turn out their members for in-district events. They brought them to national conference calls with leaders. They lobbied members of Congress on their own, not just saying, sure, put our name on a list and go do that yourselves, you reformers. This is really a coalition of organizations that goes way beyond the reform community, and looks a little bit more like America than the reform community typically looks like. It also brings real power to the table. And so let me just end on that point. I don't think these questions are ideological. I don't think the question of winning these policies, and Tom is right that you have to be an optimist to work on this issue. I have a New Yorker cartoon taped above my desk in my home office, which has Sisyphus rolling a ball through a set of cubicles, and the manager pokes his head out the door and says, "Hey, where's that status report?" So there are some days I feel like that. But the reality is, there is an incredible amount of energy within the organizations, not just the reform organizations, but the organizations that have turned to this. Organizations like the Communication Workers of America, the Sierra Club, NAACP, and so on. And so my vision for trying to win this is that the coalition of groups that sits around the table puts reform organizations in the minority. That we're in the minority because we have powerful organizations and powerful partners. And powerful partners that think about this issue through the lens of politics. Because, as I said, I don't think this issue is ideological. I think it's about who has power. And I think if members of Congress or state legislators or governors believe that their elections are at risk, that will accelerate the degree to which we put the issue on the agenda and adopt policies. So let me stop there and turn it back over.